Hey guys, this is Megan Denon, and this is my week 4 video 1 book report. I am covering chapter 14 of the Myth of the American Superhero, and my chapter is called Monomythic Credotainment. Say it again, Monomythic Credotainment. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right, to be honest, but I think I am. It sounds super complicated. It's really not. It's a really fascinating chapter. It is the intersection of religion and media, religion and the monomyth. And I think I saw Dr. Castleberry had suggested it as a chapter that everyone should read. And I would say, yeah, read it. It's really fascinating. It covers some really interesting, specific examples. And I did attempt this video once already, and I stopped at 20 minutes because I think I was just so excited to talk about it and summarize it that it wasn't a summary any longer. So I'm going to try again to point you to the most significant parts of this chapter without making you sit here and listen to me talk for 20 minutes with my kids' YouTube music on in the background. I have several quotes highlighted, and I don't want to rely too heavily on quoting the chapter, but it's so fascinating, and there are a lot of specific terms, so I definitely want to define and break down the terminology for you, and then I will try to touch quickly on the media examples that they give us. That would be Bible Man, Steven Seagal and his smash face Buddhism, superheroic bullet time in the Matrix, and the touched by whatever you need. That is in reference to Touched by an Angel. In opening, I want to say, going into this chapter, they are talking about the religious devotion of congregants, that would be us, to specific media, what I will call franchises, such as Star Wars, Star Trek, and these other examples that they've given us. Credotainment, the culture of credotainment, their chapter goes into it really well, really thorough explanation. I'm going to define credotainment for you as per the book. That would be page 286. Credotainment, entertainment products that play a role in religious life. They have chosen to use credotainment rather than something specific to Christianity because they're talking about how all religions intersect with these entertainment formulas and franchises. They claim credotainment, and on page 287 they say, because it illustrates the personal designer faith character of the phenomenon with its stronger emphasis on inner states rather than acts in the community. So this is about the person, the individual who is taking in the media and creating a designer version of how it represents religion to them. They talk a little bit about entertainment in general, the crossing of pop culture and traditional institutions such as family, school, and religion. They reference Neil Postman's Amusing Ourselves to Death and the idea of edutainment and infotainment, and how the entertainment side of things far supersedes the educational or informational. And I think that would also fall under credotainment. The entertainment side supersedes the religious side. And they go to great lengths to show that through this chapter. The very first, let's talk about syncretism. Syncretism would be when that pop culture and that traditional intersect. And society decides to blend the traditional to revitalize the former. So using pop culture to bring life to a traditional institution And one way that they have seen this is through the amazing Bible Man. I worked at a Bible bookstore in West Tennessee. There's a little bit of that West Tennessee accent coming out. There you go, y'all. When I did in 2004, Bible Man was the thing that all the good Baptist kids were into. And I'm not pointing fingers at you Baptist people, okay? That was just, my location. But anyway, Bible Man is unapologetically a ripoff of every popular early 2000s superhero. So his costume looks like Batman. He carries a lightsaber. He has characters like R2-D2, and the language, the appearance, the themes are overtly ripped off of other media franchises that are popular. So basically, what the authors want to tell us about Bible Man is that the appropriation of superheroic garb and storylines, however watered down in the violence, suggests the constant dilemma of syncretism. And I would 100% agree with that. Bible Man does not fight. Bible Man is not violent, even though he has a lightsaber, a helmet, and a breastplate. These are all the sword of truth. The breastplate of righteousness, the helmet of salvation. I almost forgot, and I shouldn't, because that was pounded into my head when I was a kid. All of these things are used to quote scripture at people and win. So, without violence, is this guy really a superhero? I guess is what the book is asking us. They say, how can the comic book style narrative lead to understanding the Prince of Peace when the signposts are laser swords, action figures, and rigid stereotypes of the righteous hero and the evil other? How compatible are superheroic disciples with a biblical religion that insists that God alone is super? Very valid point. Moving right along from Christianity and Bible Man, we go into Buddhism, which, if you haven't had a world religions class, if you're not familiar with Buddhism at all, a basic tenet for Buddhists is that it is a peaceful religion. It is about peace. It is not about violence. I'm sure that somewhere over the rainbow there are violent sects of Buddhism, but Buddhism overall is known as a peaceful religion. Steven Seagal, however, has taken his Aikido martial arts and prolific film career to show us how Buddhism is violent, or at least to assign himself as a superhero, a violent Buddhist superhero, who, however, is only pushed to the brink of extreme violence because he wants to defend the weak. And the way that the book defines it is a barely audible man of peace who speaks most effectively in his destructive rampages to protect the weak. The chapter goes on to discuss this lack of correlation between actual Buddhism and the way that Steven Seagal portrays Buddhism and as a superhero. It also points out that once he had a website going for this character, most people showed up not to talk about Dharma, but to talk about the martial arts. So, the superheroic innocence is no less lethal when clothed in Buddhist garb. That would be the closing statement on that section on page 295. Again, they're saying it's not just about Christianity. Society takes other religions that they relate to, assigns it violence, and attaches it to superheroes, and uses superheroes as a symbol, even if it doesn't truly line up religiously. The next thing that they talk about is the Matrix, which we all know is huge. And I think when this book was published, it was very huge. So it's kind of maybe dwindled now, but at the time it was a really big deal. A lot of Christians got really excited about the Matrix. There's a lot of overt references, character names to Christianity, and people were using this in Bible studies, holding it up against biblical experience and readings, and using it as a tool to study the Bible. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to laugh. Anyway, this section brings us into the word polysemy, which I did have to Google to understand how to pronounce, and I'm probably still saying it wrong, so I'm sorry. Page 295. Look it up. Polysemy describes ambiguities that prevent interpreters from assigning a determinate meaning to a symbol. The Matrix is very good at what they call cultivated polysemy, in which both creators and fans collaborate in making the most of its suggestive indeterminacies. It was a complicated read right there. Basically what they're saying is that we can take any aspect of any religion that we want, apply it to the Matrix, and make it represent something. The creators of the Matrix were actually quoted as saying that all of these religious symbols that you see throughout the film across multiple religions were mostly intentional. And so they even are saying, like, it's the Rorschach test. It's which the book talks about too on page 296. What you want to see is what you see in this film. So Buddhist, Christianity, Gnostics, it's that Jesus of the Revelation who comes back and destroys the enemies of God to create the new heaven and the new earth. And those who are opposed to violence, such as Buddhists and Christians, have kind of reconciled the extreme violence in the Matrix, also in these other superhero analogies, to it being a metaphorical representation. Not only metaphorical, but necessary because of our desensitized youth. You need violence to get their attention. Once you get their attention, you can implement your symbols. I found this section of the chapter really compelling. They do bring up Black Elk, who was a Sioux Indian chief. There's this moment in time where the Sioux thought that with these vests and this belief that they were invincible to bullets, which led to a massacre. And in the end, Black Elk is reflecting as an old man on this massacre and lamenting that he wished he had understood the tragedy of believing in something that didn't exist. The authors carefully throw out that ecstatic Matrix fans have yet to link their sights to tragic visions of bullet time, in reference to Black Elk and the massacre, and bullet time as it refers to how Neo can dodge bullets. Anyway, that's a really interesting section, so even if you don't read the whole chapter, I would suggest that section that talks about the Matrix. It also has an overarching reference to religion. Like, there's a lot of religions discussed. It's not so Christian specific, but very interesting. The final program that they address in this chapter is Touched by an Angel, which, honestly, you guys, I loved that show. Like, I did. It was so, like, warm and fuzzy, and, you know, my parents never had to worry about whether they had to step in and not let me watch it, because it was pretty wholesome entertainment. The way that they want us to discuss Touched by an Angel is under the title of Touched by Whatever You Need. So unapologetically, Touched by an Angel is about angels and not about any specific religion. They never talk about Jesus. They never talk about church. They never show church. It's simply angelic visitations. It's not violent. And one of the things that the authors pointed out on page 301 is that Touched by an Angel has provoked relatively little philosophical discussion among fans. Unlike any of these other shows that we've been talking about. It's basically, even among their fan base, kind of a new age, everybody's thing can be here, it's all good, we're not trying to be anything specific, this is just about like energy and vibes and positivity and spiritual experiences, as not related to specific religion. On page 303, they say that it seems to us that speakers seem easily classified as excited fans or skeptical analysts, and the two communities do not link up to try and enrich each other's perspectives. So basically, you're either a fan of Touched by an Angel and a fan of how they do it, or you're a critic. And these people don't really interact on message boards in the way that other people, maybe fans, may have some dismissive attitudes towards plot lines or certain characters. It's not the case with Touched by an Angel. Either you're a fan or you're a critic. I think it's also interesting to mention that when at the end of the chapter, the authors kind of talk about how there's no working church in Touched by an Angel in any of the episodes. So they're saying, like, there's a lack of specific and practical examples of religion working in everyday life, which kind of has a broad appeal and kind of like take what you need from the show type of philosophy. I hope that made sense. So in closing, and again, I apologize, this is so long, but I just feel like it's all necessary. Their closing chapter, or their closing section, is credotainment and redemptive expectations. And I'm going to leave you with a few quotes, a little thing by me. On page 304, they say, "We see a paradox in these cyberspatial communities of faith. The behavior of the congregants is potentially far more democratic than the myths they log on to celebrate." Continuing, "Even though fans may be very favorably disposed to a series as a whole, they can be quite dismissive about particular episodes or characters." I mentioned that earlier, straight from the book, page 305. There are these online communities that are created based off of these programs, and they are a more authentic, democratic version of religion, basically, is what the book is saying. And they don't hold it as infallible in the way that many believers of all religions do. They're allowed to critique. They're allowed to feel dismissive about certain aspects of the show. And I think that's really interesting thing for us to think about in regards to where religion and culture cross media and entertainment and what we can learn from that. My take on the chapter is that basically cloaking the superhero monomyth in religion does not take away its core attributes, and as seen in the examples, each person sees as much or as little of their own religious beliefs as they want when watching or experiencing these monomyths. And I did type that, and I was reading it, sorry. I think attributes like violence are always going to be in the monomyth, and how we allow that violence or embrace that violence is going to pertain to our own experience and what we want to take out of it. But it's still a monomyth. It's still this core superhero structure that doesn't change for religion, and doesn't bend necessarily, except for where we want to bend it. I hope that makes sense. I want to leave you with the closing of the chapter. I'm sorry for all the quotations, but it says it much better than I do. So in closing, minute 20, perhaps an awareness will dawn that assuming normal human responsibilities is more congruent with both democracy and religion than helplessly waiting for superheroic intervention. Our larger hope is that among the profound effects Charles Henderson perceived of the new media upon the way people practice faith, as well as communicate with each other and with God, will emerge an awareness of the theological and ethical challenge of creed attainment itself. Best said by the authors, and again, highly suggest that you read this chapter. It's fascinating and totally relevant to being at Mid-America Christian University. I hope you guys have a great week. Sorry this is a little tardy. I hope you have time to enjoy it and respond. And again, it's long. I'm not super interesting, but the book is. So maybe read it if you enjoyed my summary. I will see you guys soon.